Okay, so this video is going to talk about the passive voice, what it is, how it's translated in English, how it's translated in Latin, and how to form it in Latin. Okay, so first let's talk about what it means what voice means. And voice is going to always talk about verbs, so the actions of the sentence, and voice is going to explain whether the subject does the action of the verb or has the action of the verb done to it. Now, if something's in the active voice, it just means that the subject is going to be doing the action. If you're active, you're doing the action. Passive, on the other hand, the passive voice just means that the subject is going to have an action done to him or her. So, just very quickly, a reminder, the subject of a sentence is the noun that the sentence is talking about. So, for example, in the sentence, Sextus is frightened by the wolves, Sextus is what we're talking about, what the verb is frightened refers to. On the other hand, Sextus throws mice to the wolves. Sextus is still the subject because throws refers to Sextus, who's doing it. The wolves love to eat meat. There, the wolves is the subject. It's what we're talking about. And then the last one, Sextus is in trouble. Again, Sextus is the main idea that the sentence is talking about. So let's do some examples of what an active voice sentence looks like. And what you'll know is that, or notice rather, so let's do some examples of what active voice looks like. In English, almost all sentences are going to be active. In fact, English teachers don't like when you use the passive voice. They like only when you use active. So some examples. So we avoid school. I forgot my homework. Mr. Williams is our teacher. The students know everything. In each of these, the subject, this bolded word, does the action. We are the ones who avoid. I'm the one who forgot. Mr. Williams is the one who is. The students are the ones who know. These ones, however, these passive voice examples, the subject, again the word that's bolded, is going to have the action done to them. I was carried. So I'm not carrying anything, I'm receiving the carrying. I'm being carried. The students are loved. So again, they're not loving anything, they're being loved. We were captured, we aren't capturing, we're being captured. The sentence was not appreciated. The sentence isn't doing anything, it's being appreciated. You are remembered, you are receiving the remembering. So the interesting thing is in passive voice, what was the direct object in an active sentence, what the word that received that action in the active sentence, now becomes the subject in the passive one. So for example, the active sentence would be I love school. The passive, however, the school is loved by me. So notice school goes from being the direct object in the active to being the subject in the passive. Same thing is true here. The girl throws her books is an active sentence. She's doing the throwing. However, if you want to make that passive, you flip it, and so the direct object becomes the subject. The books are thrown by the girl. So the books are what's receiving that action. Okay, in Latin, unlike English, the passive voice is going to be used all the time. However, it's going to have the exact same meaning that it does in English, just that the subject receives the action of the verb, something's done to it. So, the tenses that we're going to talk about today are the present, imperfect, and future, so when actions occurs. And we're going to talk about how to form the passive for those three tenses. Now, the nice thing is that almost every tense is formed exactly the same way, active and passive, except that instead of using the active endings that OST, MUST, ISNT, you're using the passive ones, RISTER, MER, So there's that switch from, again, the active endings to the passive. The stems are going to be exactly the same. The vowels are almost exactly the same. So, as I said, the passive endings are going to be this RISTER, MER, And then finally, translation. A passive verb is going to be translated into English by taking your subject, then putting the verb to be, the verb sum in Latin, but to be in English in the appropriate tense, and then adding the ed form of the main verb. So for example, portator. Step 1, you're going to say it's he. she or it. Step 2, you're going to do the present of is, because you know porta just shows that it's happening now. And then you're going to add the ed form of the main verb. So porta means to carry, so you're going to say carried. So you're going to be left with he is carried. Okay, so here I'm going to show you the formation very briefly. Notice porto just becomes portor. Vowels stay exactly the same. You're just changing the ending. Portas, the S is going to be replaced with a ris. So the A stays the same, everything else stays the same. You're just adding the passive endings. T becomes tour. Mus becomes mur. Tis becomes mini. Nt becomes inter. And if you check these out, all you're doing here is you have your subject, then the verb to be in the present tense, and then that ed form of the verb. So I'm going to show you a couple more tenses as we go through this. Imperfect. You can probably pause this for a second and have a look. Everything should hopefully make sense to you. Future tense. This is the one place where there is a slight exception. Notice porta bo becomes porta bor. That makes sense. Porta bis becomes porta beris. This is the one tricky place as you're translating these. The I in the second person, this is form, becomes an E here. Everything else is exactly the same in terms of vowel. T becomes tour, the I's stay there. Mus becomes mur, tis becomes mini, nt becomes unter. Okay, video, the same as the other forms that we were just talking about. And again, pause this, rewind it if you need to see it again. But notice this is becomes eris in the future passive. The other place where there's a slight exception is again in the second person. The is in the present of duco, so duco, dukis, becomes again ducaris. That is becomes aris for the present passive of duco. Everything else stays exactly the same. Okay, so that's going to do it for the passive voice. If you have any questions on either formation or how it's translated, please send me an email and I will answer the question at the beginning of class tomorrow. Thanks so much.